Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first episode of the Tennis Toast from the house of the Toast Network. After having successful runs, so-called successful runs with Toast the Toss and Toast the Talk about cricket and Formula One, we now are venturing in the sport of tennis. Well, January is the month of Australian Grand Prix, and there's a lot happening down under. To join me in this discussion, we have Tejas and Suri. Both of them are ardent tennis fans, unlike the host, and the host believes that he will return much educated about the current state of affairs or what are drawing the headlines in the world of tennis. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed, I would request Tejas to tell us about his all-time favorite tennis player.
Thanks, Arijit. Thanks for the introduction as well. It goes without saying, I think I started watching tennis around about 2003, 2004-ish, properly following tennis from that time. So it's always been Rafael Nadal since day one. The first actual complete match I watched was 2005 semifinals between Nadal and Federer, which is part of folklore, right? So since then, it's always been Nadal. I think 17 years now, no one else even comes close to the final.
And your favorite player in the women's draw?
Women's draw in the current lineup,
Not
not
current,
a lot.
sorry, all-time favorite.
All time has to be Justina Nardin.
Okay,
She
nice.
was quite special
Yeah,
with her game.
the most popular Belgian after Tintin. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be asking Suri about his favorite tennis player. So Suri, tell us about who is your all-time favorite tennis player.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, good question. My favorites keep changing over a period of time. Right now, it's Roger Federer. But when I started watching tennis, my favorite was always Steffi Graf growing up. And of course, I always had this thing for Germany. So, Schumacher, Graf, and then the German football team. And on the men's side, funnily, it wasn't Sampras. I didn't really like him at the time because he almost won everything. So, my favorite was Pat Rafter when I was growing up.
Yes,
always loved the serve and volley game, Pat Rafter. So
yes, you have a liking for the Aussies.
Yep, the Aussies again.
Yeah, I miss the Australian players. Like they had some amazing players. Philip Pausis was there, Patrick Rafter, and of course we had Leighton Hewitt.
Yep, Leighton Hewitt. Funnily, who I didn't really like, though he was Aussie. So
yeah, so that's with our favorites from all-time list. So now I would like to know, Suri, could you tell us about what is happening down under? Why is there so much murmur and what's happening? Could you just brief us?
First of all, I think now that the Ashes is done, all the focus is on tennis, and of course, the talking point of the Australian Open has been Novak Djokovic, no doubt about it. All unwanted attention at the start of the tournament. Djokovic, famously, everyone knows, has been very indifferent on the vaccine. I think most people call him an anti-vaxxer, but he's not really revealed his vaccination status. And the whole saga is pretty unfortunate. Though I'm not a huge Djokovic fan, I would have liked to see him at the Australian Open. But considering what has gone on in Australia with the public put under such strict measures and lockdowns, I think in the end, the government had to stand up for the people and kind of ban him in the end, which I don't know if I have an opinion on that. I would have loved to see Djokovic just as a tennis fan, but in the end, I think what happened was fair. So that's my take on the whole issue.
Okay. Tejas, do you think the Australian authorities or the Australian government, were they too harsh on Djokovic, or was it fair?
In the end, it was a fair decision because we've heard stories from Australia, right? It's been quite difficult for the public themselves to travel from one state to other. One of the example I want to give is in the BBL, right? Perth Scorchers, they're not able to play at their home ground because of strict COVID rules that the Western Australia government has. So it's only fair that also Djokovic didn't really do himself a favor by misleading a few things. Some information was not right, which he acknowledged at the later point of time. So it didn't really help his cause too. And I mean, if there is a rule, then you have to follow. And as I think someone said the other day that if he wanted to play in Australia, then he really would have, right? With by following all the guidelines that the nation has. So in the end, it was a fair ruling. I feel bad as a tennis fan. I do echo the same emotion as Suri has. I really feel bad as a tennis fan. I think 9 times champion in Australia, perhaps the greatest player ever to play in Australia. At the Australian Open, of course, it's a loss for everyone, including Novak, of course. But in the end, it's a fair call.
But I would like to know one thing. What is the reaction of the other players, like his competitors? What has the reaction been? Are they okay with it, or they are just like, well, my favorite player, he has never been quite fond of Djokovic, and his name is, of course, King Kyrgios. So King Kyrgios has been quite vocal and critical of Djokovic for the past 2 years now. So, Suri, your views about someone like King Kyrgios or his reaction towards towards Djokovic.
So, good point, interesting point, in fact. And I was reading something that Kyrgios said recently. In fact, these last few days, Kyrgios has said something really positive in relation to Djokovic. He's always, as you said, been, not really fond of Djokovic. But he actually said that if Djokovic makes it to the Australian Open, now we know he's not going to be, that he'll be so pissed off that he's probably going to beat everyone pretty bad, and he didn't want to take any part in facing him. So, and I read another statement, I don't know how true this is, but he said, Djokovic and I have actually been friends for a long time, and the media's kind of divided us and putting us on either side and being at loggerheads. And he mentioned something about when he was growing up, Djokovic was the one who came up to him and said, if you have anything, if you feel free to reach out to me for help, kind of thing. So it was nice to hear. But yeah, Kyrgios, generally what he says about Djokovic, I enjoy. I mean, I enjoy Kyrgios. He just says it as he sees it. And I think he makes a lot of fair points. And yeah, but again, unfortunate that Djokovic is not here.
Kyrgios has strange preferences and strange likings. He has a liking for Boston Celtics, by the way. Okay, on that note, moving from Djokovic, in his absence, whom do you think, Tejas, will benefit the most?
Novak, fortunately or unfortunately, had a really easy draw till the semis. If I'm not wrong, I think he was scheduled to face, or rather, it was Matteo Berrettini in the quarters. That was the first big challenge that he was going to have. So I feel Berrettini, with the kind of form that he has shown over the last 2 years, he's been good. He's not a one-trick pony anymore. Initially he was playing good at the grass court level, and then now he has expanded his game to the other courts. So I expect him to reach the semis there. From the second quarter, it's between Nadal and Zverev, right? Nadal might even, I know he's my favorite player, but he has Karatsev at the round of 16, if I'm not wrong. So it probably will be someone from these three, Karatsev, Nadal or Zverev in the semis. He's in the second half. So he's a sure shot finalist for me. And I think in the third quarter, you cannot look past someone like Tsitsipas. He'll be there. I think he's up against someone really good. I forgot him, but I think he'll make it to the semis anyway. So in the end, I do expect Daniil Medvedev. He's been playing incredible tennis. I think it has gone under the radar because he played really well for Russia in the ATP Cup. at least from what I saw. He completely demolished whoever was in front of him. So he's in good form. So I expect him to reach the finals and probably win the whole tournament.
I remember one of the Australian Opens. I'm not sure about the year when he went till the final and he had blisters, which was troubling him at the end, and he could not win. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but was it 2019 when he was there at the Australian Open final?
Yeah, I think in 2019 he was at the US Open finals.
Okay, sorry.
5-set marathon against Nadal.
Okay, yeah.
He's a good player,
Suri,
definitely.
yeah, he's a great player. And Suri, about your preference in the absence of Djokovic. Surely not Nadal.
Zverev, I think for me, Medvedev, of course, there's no doubt, like whether Djokovic was there or not, Medvedev was going to be one of the finalists. I believe he's, even if you look at the odds makers, he's the favorite right now, and is Medvedev. So I don't have too many doubts there. Zverev, I think, is ready to take that step at the Grand Slam. He won the year-end tour finals at Turin this time, I think it was, right? I was in London. He's been in really good form, but you know how Zverev is kind of mentally frail. He's always shown that he can win the 3-set matches, best of 3, but when it comes to 5, he kind of melts down. Famously against Dominic Thiem when he took a 2-6 to love lead in the US Open, and then he fell in 5 sets. But I think Zverev has a good chance this time. Tsitsipas, again, I have my doubts. He always seems to be, he had a brilliant French Open, and then he kind of fell off. And I think there's an opening on that side. I haven't studied the draw that well, but one of the guys I would look out for is Hubert Horkaj from Poland. He's had a lovely season last year. So Horkaj is good, and then a few other names. I don't know if they're going to make the finals or not, but to look out for. You have Casper Ruud, who's been doing pretty well. So and like Tejas was saying, Berrettini definitely, though his lead up, etc., has not been that great, but he had a really good 2021. So yeah, those are the guys. But Zverev and Medvedev for me.
Yeah. Tejas, any dark horse?
I think I'd like to, I'm not sure about the dark horse, but I'd like to see Yannick Sinner make an impact. I think he's in Tsitsipas's third quarter, if I'm not wrong. So I think a round of 16 between them will be interesting. Unfortunately, Casper Ruud is also in that quarter itself. So it's going to be a little more competitive and open, as Suri said. I expect Tsitsipas to do well because he did really well last time around in Australia, and he's generally good on hard courts. But I really feel Yannick Sinner is someone for the future. So I really hope he can make an impact this time around.
Okay, thank you, Tejas. For almost 2 decades now, tennis has been dominated by the trinity of Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal. So, but then when we move to the women's draw, it has been quite tentative. Like champions come in, champions leave, they have meltdowns, and anyone who seems to win has a very angry meltdown. So, Suri, coming to you, whom do you tip to win the women's draw this year?
I wish I could tell you that I'd be a millionaire, the perfect bet to place. But okay, going into the women's side, my favorite in general for any tournament is Ashley Barty. She is just an amazing player. So Barty is, but again, it's Australia. She's never done that well at the Australian. I don't think she's been to the final at the Australian Open. So added pressure. And besides, the last part of last season, she didn't really play because of the strict guidelines in Australia. She couldn't travel, and she chose not to play. So I don't really know how she's going to come up. Osaka's back, but I don't. Again, a lot of media attention on her since what happened with her mental health situation and coming out and not playing the US Open, etc. So, but I think the women to look out for would be Annette Kontaveit, who had an amazing season in the end last year. She lost to Muguruza, I think, in the final of the year-end finals, but she's going to make it pretty far, I feel. Sabalenka was good last season, but she didn't start off this season really well, so she's another possibility to look out for. And Badosa, Paula Badosa is really good. So I can give you a few more names, but that won't serve the purpose of your question. So I think those are the names that I'll be looking forward to. Yeah,
a lot of people to choose from. Tejas, $1 million question for you also.
Yeah, it's quite difficult to go with the seedings when it comes to women's tennis these days, because every Grand Slam, tends to throw up new champions. Right? There's a little bit of inconsistency over there at the women's section of tennis, but I'd love to see Ash Barty. I also love her as a tennis player. She's really good. To think that she was a cricket player and now she's winning Grand Slams is just incredible. Just an incredible story. So I'd love to see her do well. For me, there's one person that I've been following for the last 2 years, since 2019 when she made her debut, was Corey Goff. There's been a lot of talk about Corey Goff, right? She being a teenager, doing well, winning a couple of rounds here and there, winning against Venus. I think she won against Venus once. So there's been a lot of talk, and she has a lot of sponsors now, big name sponsors attached to Corey Goff. I really want to see her that translate into her games, because now is the time. She's into her 3rd season. She's strong. She's stronger than what she was a couple of years ago. I really hope she makes an impact, because we don't really want to see a teenager who has so much promise, just blow away with all the attention that she gets. Right. So we talk about Fernandez, Raducanu, and all those guys. They made an impact, but I think Corey Goff, the kind of game that she has, the natural brute force power that she has, right? It has to be translated on court. So I'd like her to do well, at least come to the quarters or semis this time, make a little bit of an impact, and say that, yes, I've matured and now I'm ready to take the next step.
Speaking of young players, you did point out to Hernandez and Emma, who were the finalists in the US Open. Suri, your views about the chances of Emma or Leila Hernandez?
I was just looking at the draw, and I think Sloane Stephens is going to beat Raducanu in the first round. That's my pick for the show. Sloane Stephens, by the way, just got married to Josie Altidore. For any fans out there of football or tennis, I follow her on Instagram, so I'm pretty big fan of Sloane Stephens when she won the US Open. She's not been that great since. She's kind of fallen off, but she's still a very tenacious player, always been a defensive kind of player who keeps the ball in. So, and the way Raducanu plays, she's got a big forehand and still young. So, that game of patience and being there on the baseline and play that, I don't think she'll have to bring her A game to play Sloane Stephens. And I think it'll be a big hurdle for her in the first round. That's what I feel. Leila Fernandez, in fact, though Leila Fernandez lost the final of the US Open, I think she's the more mature player right now than Raducanu. And she does have a chance of, making it further. That's how I feel. I don't think she's going to win it, but yeah, definitely make good progress.
Okay, thanks for that. And I wanted to know one thing. It's a common observation, like how do players in such severe restrictions and restrictions due to the pandemic or the bubble, they have to follow the bubble restrictions, the biobubble restrictions the athletes have to follow. Do you think that has a huge impact on their physical as well as mental abilities?
Yeah, so just to give you a context, I think just going off topic, BFC this season in the Indian Super League, right? They've not been doing all that well. And Chetri tweeted out the other day saying that it's been quite difficult to be in a bubble day in and day out, train, and then suddenly half an hour before the kickoff, you'll see that many players have tested positive, and then you have to quarantine yourself, all those things. It's not easy at all. But when it comes to tennis, I think the big guys, they have a little bit of a larger team to get through all this bubble rules and keep their mental health on check, right? But it's the smaller players who are probably in their first season or their second season trying to make an impact there. Those guys struggle a lot because this is unprecedented, right? And they don't have a larger team traveling because of financial reasons and other reasons as well. So the guys or girls with smaller team tend to suffer more, I feel. So it's not really related to skill or anything. That's the worst part of the times that we are living in currently. It's just that you need more people around, and that itself is something that is restricted. So yeah, the smaller guys, the smaller guys and girls will be the ones who will be affected.
Okay, Suri, your views.
Not too different, and really, I don't think I can speak much on the subject. I just don't understand what goes through the mind. But just as a human being, if you're in a bubble and you can't really mingle with people, etc., it's really hard. You're not a machine, so I'm pretty sure it's really hard. And I echo the same thing that Tejas said, in that the bigger players can afford a larger team. They they have those resources to at least have that mental break or whatever they need when they're in the bubble. But the smaller guys, it's just them and the coach and probably one other guy, or just him and the coach or her and the coach. So yeah, it's going to be tougher for them, like it is in every other aspect as well, for the smaller players, because you look at even the prize money, the money that they make, they just have to, it goes in paying their coaches, etc. So it's not, we think that they make huge amounts of money, but it's not like that. So unless you make it really big, it doesn't work out that way. So yeah, I think I echo the same thing that they just said.
Okay, on that note, we'll be ending today's show. But ladies and gentlemen, do catch us again again next week, when the first week would have come to an end, and we'll be having a show after the finals of the Australian Grand Prix. Hopefully, the favorites of Suri and Tejas make an impact, and if Suri still bets on players, he might make $1 million. You never know. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, bye. See you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.